Good morning, everybody, and welcome. This is my podcast, episode number 2. Things are a little different this time. I've got a video. Big news. As you could see from the thumbnail, the first lamb was born yesterday, which would be January 28th, my mom's birthday. Anyway, the first lambs were a lovely set of twins, and I'll show you the clip of them right now. These two ladies are part of the group of surprise lambs. We've still got 11 more ewes. It's a nice set of twin ewe lambs. Just born this afternoon. It's January 28th. Interestingly enough, since we now have lambs, that also means, here's a little look into what we do around here. Since we now have lambs, and I just checked the phone, it's 16 degrees out. With the whole 16 degree thing, how we handle lambs is Jason and I take turns throughout the night. He generally stays up a little bit later, and then I take the earlier shift because I usually get up to work on my site. So anyway, he handles the checking every 2 to 3 hours until 2 in the morning, and then I take over at 4. So I just got in for my second shift. It's, let me check the time, 6:29. So things were good this morning. Interestingly enough, the mom with babies had actually, both of them, well, her and her babies had both relocated a little bit since 4, and so had a couple of the other ewes. I was surprised. I didn't figure anybody would move. What I'm looking for out there, well, obviously with the 2 new babies, is just to make sure everything looks good, make sure they're still with their mom, make sure they didn't wander off somewhere crazy. So what I'm looking for out there, not only is to make sure that the new babies and the new mom are doing well, which, here's a little funny story. I go in the barn to check the new babies, and there's a cat running around, and I see the new mom headbutt the cat. Which, that's her job, that's what she's doing. Taking care of her babies. Anyway, what I'm checking for on the other 11 ewes is somebody who's doing something that everyone else isn't. So if 10 of them are laying down chewing their cud and there's one standing up, you need to take a closer look at the one who's standing up, or the other way around. But an easy kind of pick to relax and don't worry about it is chewing their cud. If they're chewing their cud, they're going to be hanging out for a little while yet. Not going into labor anytime soon. If they're not chewing their cud, and if they're doing something that everybody else isn't, that's the gal you need to take a little bit closer look at. But anyway, so far my 2 checks today really haven't come up with anything. But we'll keep after it until those other 11 have their babies as well. So that's the scoop on the new lambs. Really excited, and the funny thing is, we brought these characters in like 3 weeks ago, thinking, oh my gosh, they have to come in, they are going to have babies any minute. So we're both really surprised that they went this whole time, and that the first babies have just showed up today. But anyway, I'm glad they're here. Then the other funny thing is, I'm writing an article about what's noisier, ducks or chickens. And honestly, since we're around them all the time, you don't really notice. You just kind of tune it out. But since I've been writing that article, I've been trying to pay a little bit more attention. And I would have said they're both about the same until I paid a little bit closer attention. And when I went out, like I said, it's about 6:30 now. Both at the 6:30, well, the 6 o'clock and the 4 o'clock check, it's the chickens. Those roosters are crowing all the time. The ducks make noise, sure. But boy, the louder one, the one you notice more when I start paying attention, that's definitely the chickens. And honestly, I wouldn't have guessed because, like I said, I just tuned it out. But if you're wondering, chickens, they're a little bit louder. Alrighty, what I had planned for today's episode is, if you're interested in looking at some really great channels on YouTube, I have a list of the stuff that we love to watch. We get a huge kick out of it. There are a few websites, but most of it's YouTube channels. So let's get cracking. Okay, first up is for cattle. If you aren't aware, or if you've not run across it, Judy has a channel called Judy, Regenerative Rancher, and he shows all about year-round grazing with his cattle, and he also has some sheep. Really, really interesting, great footage. Check it out. Next up, under the sheep category, are a couple people from the UK. One of which, the first one is the Sheep Game, and that's a guy named Cameron Wilson from Ayrshire, Scotland. We love his channel. He is energetic, he's fun, and despite the fact that he does sheep for a living, well, part of his living, and he's also a shearer. We do sheep for a living. It's amazing how differently we do things versus folks in the UK do things. And once again, the scenery is beautiful, and he shears part-time, and he does scanning, like an ultrasound. So he goes to other people's farms all the time, and you see all kinds of different setups. You see all kinds of different breeds of sheep. It's really interesting. Check it out. Another one that we have in the sheep vein that we've started watching recently is a gal who's named Joanne, and her channel is Joanne the Shearer, and she's from Ireland. The neatest part about her channel, at least for me, is how crazy different the scenery is from here. They have a totally different breed of sheep. They just do things completely different. If you're looking for some truly lovely scenery, check it out. On to pigs. The two channels that I watch the most, well, first of all is Red Tool House. That is a couple who raises pigs in southern West Virginia. They have a lot of cool information, and it's really interesting because they have a little bit of pasture, but it's vast majority woods. So you see how they're set up, see what they've got as far as facilities, see how they move things around. Then Red Tool House, their main focus is to sell pork to customers, but they show you the things they're doing. They show you how they work out challenges with their area, because like I said, it's wooded and kind of rocky there. The second pig channel that I've been getting a big kick out of, and actually it's diversified, they do more than just pigs, is Sheridan Park Farms. They're in one of the Carolinas. They do pasture pigs, and they also, a big thing they do is sell stuff at farmers markets. They just put out a video on starting pasture turkeys, I'm pretty sure. Anyway, all kinds of interesting stuff. You can see how they're progressing through their journey. They just started doing their own breeding stock before they were just buying in pigs. And it's really interesting. It's interesting to see their setup, how they work things. They have a little bit more pasture than the other guy, but still, it's a small farm. It's just a couple and their son. I think this is like their third year with pigs. So what's worked for them, what hasn't worked for them. And then they're pretty straightforward with it. They'll show you the stuff that worked, and then show you the stuff that didn't work super good too. Alrighty, if you're interested in more duck information, you need to check out Metzer Farms, METZER farms.com. They are a hatchery and a commercial farm in California, I'm pretty sure, but mostly waterfowl. So obviously you can buy stuff from them, but they also have just tons of information on their site, and they are actually doing it. That's the part I love about them, is so often when you're looking for information, you get, I'll call it hobby farm information. And there's nothing wrong with that. There's nothing wrong with that. But if you're trying to do something for a more commercial purpose, that's a little bit different set of priorities. You're not just doing it because you want to. You're doing it because it's a business, or at least you're hoping it's a business or part of your business. So that means you set things up a little differently. That means you have a little bit different priorities. That means, to be honest, you at least need to have it break even, or better yet, profit. And you definitely need to have it profit in the first couple years. I always try to make sure to source the information, or at least double check the information with someone who's coming from more of a commercial background, because they are making decisions based on what works for their wallet, not just what looks cute or seems like the new cool breed. And there's nothing wrong with that. If you want a breed that just you love it and you're really attracted to it, that's great. But it's a different story if you're looking for something for business purposes. So that Metzger Farm, they have a ton of just practical information, because they're selling geese and ducks, they're selling eggs, the works. They're actually doing it every day. Great place to look for stuff. Just had to restart because my camera ran out of space. So hopefully I'll get the right spot to start up again. Anyway, so the next one on my list is Sprague River Homestead. And the main thing I watch them for is rabbits. They are a homestead in southern Oregon, in the dry part of Oregon. And the interesting part about them, aside from the rabbits, is that they provide all their own power through the solar array that they put up. It was going to be crazy expensive to hook up to the grid, so they handle it on their own. It's pretty neat. Anyway, but the best thing I like about them is the rabbit stuff. They give you the information that works because they've been keeping track and figuring this out and experimenting using their own rabbits for like 6 years now. So Nikki is the one who mainly talks about rabbits, and there's just tons of hands-on practical information to help you do a better job raising your rabbits. Because one of the catches with the more unusual livestock is sometimes getting the information, the actual data type stuff, not just people's opinion, is kind of tough. Put that together with the more unusual stuff generally doesn't have the veterinary support that something like dairy cattle or dogs and cats would, just because so many more people are bringing dogs and cats into the vet practice. And at least in this area, there's a huge emphasis on training for dairy cattle, but training for something like sheep and goats, it is done very minimally. So when the vet gets out of school and gets out into the field, they just don't have a ton of practice in sheep, goats, and rabbits. So if you need the vet help, the vet's doing his or her best, but they just haven't seen enough of your stuff to be super at what will help you yet. So that's one of the things that I really value with Sprague River Homestead, is I get tons of information on how to raise rabbits based on her experience. And it's true, she does show, obviously not this year, but she is a purebred breeder. She has 3 breeds, but she also focuses a lot on like what you can do if you want to get more like of a shiny hair coat on your rabbits. If you want to formulate your own feed, what's your best breeding practices? Like, when should you start breeding rabbits? When do you know that you need to cull that rabbit? What are the things that you're actually, hands-on seeing? It's really just a wonderful, wonderful resource to get hands-on, kind of in the trenches information from someone who's really, really into it. It's super. Anyway, Sprague River Homestead, you should check it out. Then the final farm type category I've got here is goats. And first up is a website called Onion Creek Ranch. It's based out of Texas. This is by far the most informative website on goats that I have ever seen. If you go to the site, and then on the side, I'm pretty sure it's on the right sidebar, there is a section called Meet Goat Mania. Check it out. That is the name of her newsletter, and there's just tons and tons of really in-depth, specific, actionable information about how to handle things that come up in the goat world. It's I have yet to read one of her newsletter articles and not get super specific, actionable information. So if you need help, she's telling you how you can handle it. It's really, really great stuff. Plus, her name's Susan Gasparotto. She has developed her own breeds, actually 2 of them, based on myotonic goats, Texmaster and Tennessee meat goat. Anyway, take a look at those guys. Those are some great looking meat goats. Truly wonderful, wonderful goats. And actually, I was at the Danville auction, I think in August. And I saw some goats sired by one of the Uncreek Ranch goats. Nice. Those genetics really carry through. Good stuff. Then, as far as goats go, and this is a channel we kind of just found. It's called Grandview Livestock out of Kansas. And this gentleman has pasture-based goats and sheep, and actually quite a few. I think he's got like, honestly, 500 or 600 of each. And then plus there's some cattle, but in watching his channel, I've yet to see the cattle. He just refers to them, but most of the stuff he's filming is the sheep and the goats. It's truly interesting, moving those big groups and how he handles it, and using a ton of livestock guardian dogs. Really, really neat stuff. The other thing that's just fascinating to me is he's keeping those characters in with one fence wire. Wow, that's impressive, if nothing else, especially for the goats who are famous for getting out. So it's just interesting how he manages. And once again, despite the fact that he's a commercial farmer, we're commercial farmers, we do things completely differently. It's very, very interesting. And then the final channel I wanted to mention, and this is kind of tangentially related. It's not about animals, it's about knitting. So if you're interested, which the reason it's related is because I spin and knit my own wool. So that's why I watch this channel. I really like it. The channel's called Nerdy Knitting. And the lady who runs that channel is Tanya, and she does a great job of very clearly explaining what exactly it is you're doing. Because I remember when I was trying to learn to knit, wow, was it frustrating. Knitting is not complicated, but that's the part that gets you, is that it's so simple, you get frustrated really, really fast because you're like, oh my gosh, how can I not get this? And then when you're reading an explanation of how to learn to knit in a book, it's tough. It's really tough to get it. Whereas on video, have someone clearly explain what you're doing, why you're doing it, and then showing you how to do it, oh gosh, makes it a ton easier. Tons easier. Then the other thing that I really enjoy about her channel is that she tells you how to adjust the patterns. Like she's doing a series on shawls right now. And she tells you if you'd like it to be a little bit longer, you just need to do this. And here's the thinking that goes into making the shawl, let's say, longer, but not as deep. Or here's how you can make it more of a chubby triangle instead of a long and skinny triangle. So you could use the same pattern, but how do you adjust it to make it suit you depending on what you want? Right. She has a ton of great information. And also, if you're into color knitting, she talks about this technique called slip stitch knitting, which honestly I'd never even heard of, but it makes a ton of sense, because if you've ever tried color knitting and you don't want to carry both colors across the whole row, the slip stitch knitting technique gets you 2 colors, so you get a variety, you get patterns in your knitting, which I really like to do, but you don't have to carry both yarns clear across the row the whole time. Anyway, there's a lot of cool stuff on there. Nerdy knitting, check it out. Alrighty, that's all I wanted to talk about today. Thanks for tuning in. Glad to have you. And please let me know if you have any questions, or if you want to, I'll do my best to answer any questions that you might have. I'd love to hear from you. We had a question on what is the difference between sheep and goats on one of our videos. Oh my gosh. You wouldn't believe how difficult that question is, because you think, oh, we got it. You know, it's the ram-shaped horns. Only sheep have those, right? Nope. It's a short tail. That's only in goats, right? Nope. So it's more complicated than you think. We're still working on that. So far, the best I've got is the obvious of if it's wool, it's a sheep, but not all sheep have wool. And if it has a beard, which happens in the females and the males, it's a goat. But not all goats have that. So, unfortunately, I'm still working on the answer for that one. Obviously, they have chromosomal differences, but the question was about, like, what can you look at them? What do you see phenotypically? That means visually, that will tell you, oh yeah, that's a goat. Oh yeah, that's a sheep. Because sometimes they look very similar. And the answer is, so far, still working on it. Have a great day. Thanks for tuning in. And stay tuned for more lamb footage.